The lights dimmed over Chicago's United Center, the air thick with anticipation, the kind that hums through a crowd when history is about to be carved in blood and sweat. August 17, 2025, UFC 319. The main event wasn't just a fight, it was a collision of chaos and control, a moment where legacies are forged or shattered. In one corner, Dricus Du Plessis, the South African warrior, the middleweight king who'd clawed his way to the throne with grit and unrelenting violence. In the other, Khamzat Chimaev, the undefeated force of nature, a man whose name alone sent chills through the division. Borz, the lone wolf, a fighter who'd been called a future champion since his first step into the octagon 5 years ago. Tonight, the world would see if prophecy would become reality. The middleweight division had been a battlefield of giants. Anderson Silva's silk-smooth reign, Israel Adesanya's surgical precision, and now Du Plessis, a man who blended raw power with a knack for defying the odds. He'd won the belt from Strickland in January 2024, defending it twice with the heart of a lion. But Khamzat? He was something else. A wrestler with the ferocity of a storm, a striker with bad intentions, and a record unblemished at 14-0. His path to this moment wasn't anything smooth. Visa issues, a brutal bout with COVID-19, and questions about his cardio and longer fights. Yet here he was, staring down Du Plessis, the man who dared to call him out. The stage was set for a war that could redefine the division. The opening bell rang, and within 7 seconds, the tone was set. Chimaev shot forward like a predator, wrapping Du Plessis in a suffocating embrace and slamming him to the canvas. The crowd roared, then groaned, as the South African found himself pinned, his arms trapped in a crucifix, Chimaev's short, sharp punches raining down. Du Plessis, known for his scrambling heart, fought to free himself, but Chimaev was relentless. The first round was a statement. This was no ordinary challenger. This was domination. Control time, 4 minutes, 52 seconds. Du Plessis barely breathed free air. As the fighters returned to their corners, the arena buzzed with a mix of awe and unease. Fans had come for a brawl, but Chimaev was delivering a clinic. If you're watching this, you're part of the MMA Arena family. Hit that subscribe button to join us as we break down every moment that shapes this sport. The second round began, and it was déjà vu. Chimaev, undeterred by the champion's resistance, dragged Du Plessis back to the mat within moments. Knees to the thighs, a suffocating grip on the back, Chimaev wasn't just fighting, he was dismantling. The Chicago crowd, restless, let their boos echo. They wanted fireworks, not a grappling masterclass. But Chimaev didn't care. His eyes were locked on gold. The story of UFC 319 wasn't just about the fight, it was about the men who stepped into the cage. Du Plessis, the pride of South Africa, had built his reign on defying expectations. His awkward striking, his relentless pressure, his ability to turn fights into dogfights had carried him past Strickland and Robert Whittaker. But Chimaev, he was a different beast. Since his UFC debut in 2020, he'd been a rocket ship, as Dana White put it. 2 fights in 10 days on Fight Island. A first-round knockout of Gerald Meerschaert. A war with Gilbert Burns that showed he could plead but wouldn't break. And now, at 31, he was here, rewriting the narrative of the division that doubted his stamina. Round 3 unfolded like a nightmare for Du Plessis. Chimaev's takedown was a thunderclap, lifting the champion and slamming him against the fence. Blood trickled from a cut above Du Plessis' eye as Chimaev pinned him in another crucifix, elbows slicing through the air. The referee watched closely, but Du Plessis, ever the warrior, refused to wilt. He gave up his back, survived, but the score was undeniable. 10-8, Chimaev. The judges' pens moved in unison. The crowd's boos grew louder, but in the MMA world, respect was forming. This was no fluke. This was a master at work. The middleweight division had been a chessboard of politics and rivalries. After Adesanya's reign, Strickland's upset, and Du Plessis' rise, the landscape was ripe for a new king. Chimaev's path hadn't been easy. Visa issues kept him out of the U.S. for stretches, and his health had faltered after a brutal COVID battle. But his dominance over Kamaru Usman, and now this, it silenced doubters. The division's top contenders, Caio Borralho, Nasruddin Imavov, Anthony Hernandez, watched from the sidelines, knowing their time might come. But who could stop this? Chimaev's 12 takedowns, 21 minutes and 41 seconds of control time, and a staggering 529 strikes landed shattered UFC records. Max Holloway's 447 strike mark against Calvin Kattar obliterated the plus 484 strike differential, untouchable. Round 4 brought a flicker of hope for Du Plessis. He stuffed a takedown, landed a sharp knee, and the crowd surged to life. But Chimaev, unfazed, chained his wrestling, dragging the champion back to the mat. Referee Mark Goddard stood them up once, citing a lack of action. But Chimaev's response was surgical. Another takedown, another crucifix. Du Plessis fought to his feet twice, only to be pulled back into the abyss. The champion's heart was unbreakable, but his body was betraying him. Chimaev's game plan was a vice, tightening with every second. This was no fight. This was a suffocation. The final round offered Du Plessis a fleeting moment of defiance. He swung for the fences, landed a combination that made Chimaev blink. For a moment, the champion was on top, hunting a guillotine, then taking Chimaev's back. The crowd erupted, sensing a miracle, but Chimaev, calm under pressure, reversed, smothered, and survived. The final horn sounded, and the scorecards were a formality. 50-44, 50-44, 50-44. Khamzat Chimaev, the new UFC middleweight champion. The lone wolf had claimed his throne. The MMA world exploded with reactions. Conor McGregor, a man who knows dominance, took to social media with a simple but powerful message. Chechnya's first UFC champion. Congratulations. His voice carried weight. His own legendary knockouts of Jose Aldo and Eddie Alvarez were benchmarks of title fight brilliance. Demetrious Johnson, the flyweight legend, stood firm against the naysayers. The Chicago crowd's boos, the fans calling it boring. Johnson didn't hold back. If you can't appreciate grappling, he said, go watch kickboxing or Muay Thai. This is MMA. This is the UFC. But not everyone was singing Chimaev's praises. Nate Diaz, the Stockton warrior, threw a barb from the shadows. Chimaev can't fight, he claimed, a jab rooted in their scrapped UFC 279 clash when Chimaev missed weight. The bad blood lingered. But it was Strickland who brought the heat. The former champion, who'd lost to Du Plessis twice, unleashed a tirade. He could out-wrestle Chimaev, he said. He'd take him down, dominate him for 5 rounds. His words were fire, but Chimaev's response at the post-fight presser was ice cold. Dricus took you down, he said with a smirk. How you gonna take me down? I beat him everywhere, striking, grappling. You talk too much. You're a funny guy. The tension between Chimaev and Strickland wasn't new. They'd trained together in Las Vegas, and Strickland claimed he'd gotten the better of Borz in the gym. But Chimaev scoffed at the memory. When I was there, he said, fired back, you said nothing. When my visa got blocked, you started talking. I'm in LA now. Come find me. The feud was personal, raw, and now, with gold around Chimaev's waist, it was a storyline the MMA world couldn't ignore. Strickland's path back to the title would have to go through the man he'd called out, a man who'd just rewritten the record books. The numbers told a story of their own. Chimaev's 529 strikes landed dwarfed anything the UFC had seen. His 21 minutes and 41 seconds of control time left Du Plessis with only 5 minutes of freedom in a 25-minute fight. The South African, who'd spent only 5 minutes on his back in his entire UFC career before this, was overwhelmed. Chimaev's 12 takedowns, his relentless pressure, his crucifix attempts, they weren't just effective, they were historic. Dana White, the UFC CEO, was blunt. Every round could have been a 10-8, except maybe the last. Du Plessis, stuck in that suffocating ground game, took a beating but never quit. White appreciated that heart, that refusal to break, even in a losing effort. But the fans, though, were divided. Social media lit up with praise and criticism. Some called Chimaev's performance a masterpiece, a grappling clinic that proved his dominance. Others echoed the Chicago crowd's boos, craving knockouts over control. One fan summed it up, Chimaev's a beast, but I came for a fight, not a wrestling match. Another countered, if you don't get this, you don't get MMA. The debate raged, but the scorecards didn't lie. Chimaev had done what few thought possible, made a champion look ordinary. Du Plessis, gracious in defeat, gave no excuses. "Big ups to Chimaev," he said. "He deserves this 100%. He beat me fair and square. I'll be back and I'm coming for my belt." His words carried the weight of a man who'd fought until the end, who'd landed 45 strikes to Chimaev's 529, who'd spent nearly the entire fight on his back but never stopped searching for a way out. His coach had called Chimaev one-dimensional before the fight, mocking his stand-up. But in the cage, Chimaev's dimension was enough. His wrestling wasn't just grappling, it was a tidal wave. The aftermath of UFC 319 wasn't just about the fight, it was about what came next. Chimaev, now 15-0, had climbed the mountain, but the division was deep. Names like Reinier de Ridder, with his grappling brilliance, and Caio Borralho, the complete package, loomed as potential challengers. Anthony Hernandez's relentless pace, Nasruddin Imovov's precision, Chimaev hadn't faced them yet.